the elephant in the room is race. If a male of color has consistently poor teachers, the likelihood that they will not A, either complete high school, or B, complete and go on to the prison system is very high. It's life or death. I mean, it really is for those young men.
Sometimes you know you have issues, but it's not sure all the time that you want to know exactly what those issues are.
Everybody makes mistakes, and I was one of them. We made mistakes, middle school, high school, grades, not going to school.
This affects everyone. The more kids we can keep in school, the more kids we can keep out of trouble, the more kids we can keep from making horrible decisions that would impact them for a lifetime, the better off we all are. Everyone has gotten here with the help of someone, whether it was our parents, a teacher, or whoever. And some people don't have that. And so just to have the opportunity to reach back and have somebody else, I think it's just something that you can't put a value on.
PASS, or Promoting Academic Success, is a program that we designed to service specifically our young men of color, but it was designed to be an early childhood intervention so that we could follow the students over time. The initial issue we ran into in terms of calling the subgroup was the parents themselves. They assumed that what we were saying is their child was somehow less than adequate as a student, or that they weren't smart. We said, no, we want you to look at what we are seeing data-wise, not just here, but across the country. We're not saying that your child won't be successful in school. We want to do something to help ensure that they'll have the best opportunity to be successful. And we want to recognize the fact that for some reason a subgroup is struggling. Let's see what we can do to make those struggles less.
But we also knew that we wanted the young boys to be able to relate in terms of like gender and like race. And so we had to come up with an idea of how we were going to work.
Any young child will want to have someone who they relate to. Many of them have brothers who are a little older than them. But what Dr. McKinney came up with the concept of, let's not look at it from the standpoint of we're going to just automatically say that they have to have the highest achieving student be their mentor. It has to be someone who they feel comfortable with, someone who they can relate to. So he looked at the idea of having high school mentors mentor our elementary children, having college mentors mentor the high school mentors, and having someone at the graduate level be mentors to the graduate students who were mentoring the high school students who were mentoring the elementary students, so that at every level we were seeing context that asked for improvement, asked for commitment, asked for understanding, but asked for actual progress towards that goal.
A mentoring program like this allows us to get back to that whole thing where we can constantly have a support unit for each other, give each other that kind of close-knit bond and support that goes beyond just environmental settings, more so into your personal life, you know, wherever you are.
You know, they really look up to you and really, you know, they really look at you as like, you know, I want you to be there for me, because they're not going to reach out to you. You got to reach out to them.
When you start a relationship with a child, that child will attach to that relationship almost immediately. And so you have to be very mindful of the fact that you don't tease them, you don't toy with their emotions, but at the same time, you have to have expectation.
And it was really heart-rending in terms of the relationship that was established, not only for the young boys, but also for the high school students, who really seemed to develop a much more sense of community and a much stronger sense of purpose.
And just the connection that we have with those boys, like those are like my kids. Like, I'm very protective of them to this day. And I just saw one I haven't seen in a few months who, you know, when he first started the program, wasn't even close to graduating, and he graduated on time this past June. And like, just to see him, I gave him the biggest hug, because it's like, I am so proud of you.
We had some students that had been suspended, some students that had been truant, weren't going to school regularly, and the program was successful in getting a lot of these students to, you know, believe in themselves and actually start going to school. We saw attendance rates increase, suspension rates decrease, grades go higher, and it was very, very rewarding to kind of see this.
It's an enriching growth piece at every level, and asking us to be accountable as men for the younger men who we're trying to have a positive effect on.
How do we really engage one another and learn one another through relationships? That cultural gap in terms of who's my audience, who am I teaching, what do I really know about them, the communities they come from, the churches they go to, the practices in the home, and how might those differ? And this is why professional development is so important, that ongoing development of self as an educator.
Going through the professional development, I think for me there were certain underlying things, that certain white privileges that I had never really thought myself to be. And through our discussions, I realized that yes, even there are some things that I didn't realize that happened to me because I was white.
Those particular social identity markers are so hard for teachers to talk about. And so oftentimes for teachers, it's really hard, and for adults in general, because kids are always talking about these things. It's adults who really have a hard time engaging in explicit race conversation.
And through the professional developments, you know, it's a great opportunity to sit down with other professionals, and it makes a stronger bond. And then, you know, from there your community starts to grow, and the kids start to grow, and they start sending certain kids to you because they know that that child had you before, and they can relate to you, and you can talk to them. And so it was really helpful for our building as a community to be able to rely on each other, you know, when it came to difficult situations or something that we didn't know how to handle.
Difference is not the problem. It's the values that we associate with those differences. And so getting teachers to talk about what are those values that I've associated with certain racial and ethnic groups? Where did I learn those? And do I need to revisit how I've come to know what I know? And enhance my practice in ways that break down those negative pieces. And so this is why we have to have what I call this ongoing professional development, the one-stop shop diversity seminars, for one afternoon are not going to do it. That doesn't stick for teachers. They need sustained, courageous, explicit conversations, and not just conversations, but conversations that build on strategies.
I call it empathy without sympathy. We have to empathize for the needs of our kids. We cannot feel sorry for them. We have to have the same level of expectation. We have to push them. We have to make demands of them so that they understand what that means. Because in the real world, no one bothers to feel sorry for you. If you don't give them a belief in themselves that they are capable and can do, many times the structure in which they live will decide that for them.
Do you have any brothers at home?
Yeah, I got one sister and two brothers.
Yeah, and who else do you live with?
My mom.
The consequences for not supporting them will ripple into the community itself. If we aren't successful in educating our particular subgroup of young men of color, that means that our economic stability right within this community will be affected, because we're not giving the community the number of people it needs to be employed and be employable.
The consequences of not doing this is to continue to look at high unemployment rates. I think anytime you see an unemployment rate, if you multiply that by 2 or 2.5, then you're looking at the unemployment rate of men of color.
I don't know who came up with the idea that kindergarten through 12th grade is the timeline that will determine whether or not you can graduate and move forward. We have to be willing to look at the fact that this is not an assembly line. If kids could come down an assembly line, we could attach onto them everything they need, just like we do cars when we're building them, it'd be great, but it doesn't work that way. As kids grow and mature, they learn things at different levels, they understand, they comprehend at different times. So if you give them that extra time, they'll feel less pressure and they'll feel more confident. Because a lot of times, if we can't instill confidence, it doesn't come out on the other end that they believe in themselves.
It is so important that teachers engage in professional development that really speaks to how do I relate, how do I build relationship, how do I teach boys of color.
It's not hard to have equal opportunity, but is fair and equal the same thing? Is what a person needs, is that what is equal? Well, you give people what they need, not just you don't give them the same thing. So when we have students who are struggling, we support them automatically. If we have special education students, we know that they have specific needs beyond the norm. So if there's something that we can put in place to help young men of color be successful, then we have to look at what are the things that we have to do. Because if we don't, we're simply saying, well, we feed everybody the same meal and it'll have the same result, and the nutritional value will be the same for everyone. That's just not real.